Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Dion Paul, Client Relations with ProSource. Today, I'll be speaking with Eddie Tapar, General Manager of ProSource. Give us a couple of minutes. I think there's an extra couple of people joining us this morning, so we'll wait a minute or two while they get online. In the meantime, if you have a question for Eddie during the webinar, feel free to ask. I'm going to keep an eye on the Zoom webinar chat. I might miss the question, so I'll ask it towards the end as well. So feel free to interject with your questions along the way, but keep in mind we'll take a minute or two towards the end to have a bit of a Q&A with Eddie. Having said that, by way of introducing Eddie, Eddie has over 25 years experience in construction and maintenance activities in the telecommunications and power industries with extensive knowledge of a variety of networks, including Australia, New Zealand, and the Caribbean. Eddie will be sharing his journey through the construction industry, his experiences, relationships, pain points, successes, and insights. Welcome, Eddie.
Thank you. Good morning to us, Morena from New Zealand.
Yeah, good morning. Hey, Eddie, thank you for joining us. When I look at your experience over the last 20 years, and I'm probably more talking about some of your leadership experience, I see General Manager, Construction Project Manager, a National Operations Manager at Lend-Lease, all in construction. So for you, and I'm probably more thinking leadership because you've got quite an extensive background, for you, where did it all start?
Well, I'm just looking there, I took a few notes, and it all started back in 1987. Starting my apprenticeship, it took me 3 years to do that with New Zealand Post Office. So, you know, you've got to start from somewhere, and, you know, decide to take that path in the construction industry, or more so the telecommunications industry. I did not think that, you know, 30 plus years later, I'd still be playing with within the industry. So it's been a great journey. As I said, it was 1984 to 87, I was doing my apprenticeship. Spent another couple of years there before I moved to the big and wonderful Australia in Melbourne. That was in 89. Continued doing telecommunications with Telecom, as it was called back then, you know, eventually becoming Telstra as it is today. And I was there till 1989, where I really had my first real break in construction, I guess, with the privatisation of more so the power industry, the telecommunications industry back in 89. That's when they started one of the biggest projects in the world at the time, or in telecommunications, which was the Optus cable TV rollout. You know, even when we think back then, and back in 1995, we did not, you know, what we didn't know back then is amazing. You know how it's all transformed, and the magnitude and the size of that network and that build. So I was pretty fortunate that you know, I got the opportunity to start with Skilled Communications. And they were doing the rollout for Optus themselves and another company called Leighton's. And that was where I really got my first opportunity as a leader. Obviously, I demonstrated some great skills in the field, being a crew leader. You know, back then it was all about productivity, safety, and all that. But it was just the way that they recognised that, you know, my planning of my field works was reaping the rewards and getting the productivity, or exceeding productivity, you know, with it, you know, but being smart about it, being clever. So, you know, once again, construction is all about planning, you know, and making sure things are in place. Everybody knows what they're doing. Everyone knows their role. So, you know, that was quickly identified by my management, and they gave me the opportunity to, you know, to become a leader. And I started even in training. I went to the training school and was training all our new recruits, and trained about 300 people over a 9-month period. And then I continued my frontline leadership or supervision, and then eventually got my ultimate role, as I thought back then, was a senior construction supervisor on the Optus rollout in Adelaide. And, you know, we all brag about how good each individual project was, and there's always these battles between the states. But I was just proud that even at the time that the South Australia project was the most productive project on the Optus rollout. So I was part of that. To be part of that was, was great to be in that team and to be noted for, the levels of productivity and quality that we had on that project. So I can continue on, but with all of that. But at the end of the day, I've been given the opportunity to take on leadership, and I've managed projects all around the countryside. So after the South Australia project, I did the Telstra Access Renewal project, telephony installations. We were installing up to 300 new service lines a day. That was quite a lot back in those days. Eventually, I went to Canberra and managed the Transact rollout on behalf of Skilled. And I've been around country Victoria doing projects for Powercor, about 700 kilometres in the western part of Victoria. You name it around the countryside. If there's anything to do with telecommunications, a lot in the power industry, AEST fibre probably built or managed 80% of the network in New South Wales. It's been instrumental to be part of growing a business from a tier 3 business right through to a tier 1, where been instrumental in picking up major projects with Lend-Lease, where they are right now, a major service provider to the NBN network. So I've been pretty fortunate, very lucky, very blessed, had some great people that have mentored me, as well as, seen and trained some graduates that have, excelled quickly and have even become my manager. And through their respect, they've even approached me and, feeling a bit guilty or, showing respect, asking me, are you happy to report to me? And I says, of course I'm happy to report to you. You were destined for this role, and I'm privileged to be working for you, because you can now take the pressure off me and talk to the board instead of myself. So it's been a great journey. The key that I see for successful projects is as I said, is your management. It's your whole team. It's your planning. There's so much activities that happen before we even start the work. The easiest part, as I'm concerned, is the guys in the field. If we manage the projects properly during the pre-construction stages, have everything ready, permits, applications, stakeholder management's under control, EPA's under control, your procurement, all is what our field workers have to do is work safely, deliver a quality product, complete your ITPs, plan your next day, close off your day, and move on to the next phase of the project. Because the real work really kicks in again after the construction, is collating all that data. It's preparing the documentation for the client, signing off the ITPs, closing out permits, dilapidation reports, you name it, all that before and after is all instrumental to closing off a project, completing your milestones, getting your progress claims, and continuing on to the next phase of the project. So that's just one project, but when you've got multiple projects going at the same time, you've got to make sure that everything's well planned and that each discipline is moving from one project to the other, so there's no lag.
Well, I was going to ask that, and I was probably thinking more telecommunications, because there's an industry where there'd be multiple projects all happening at different times, being executed by your team that you're responsible for. So when you talk about the planning, and that's the bit that overwhelms me sometimes when I look at, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Here are the resources I've got. How do I do these multiple projects all at the same time to make sure they're executed at the right phase, because they impact the other one? It becomes a bit of a minefield, particularly when you're trying to do multiple projects at the same time, multiple construction projects. I'm most interested, being that you've led from that position, handling multiple projects at the same time. I'm very interested to see or hear how you first approach that, because I look at things like that and it just seems a little bit overwhelming from a scale perspective. What are your thoughts along handling multiple projects? What do you focus on?
Well, look, I suppose the first instance is understanding your scope of work. And, you can break projects down into small steps or small stages. But the key factor with the construction activities is really understanding what it actually takes to complete tasks or a set of tasks. So then you can put it into the timeline. Another thing we've got to be mindful of, we look at the tasks. If we truly understand what the task is, you never need to touch that. All that we need to do, make sure is that we program it accordingly, and make sure that we have the processes in place before, during, and after to be able to manage that. So it's very important that you need to have a high-level project management plan where you're managing multiple projects, because in the real world, you can send out a week's worth of work or 2 weeks worth of work, but that's based on all the diagrams, all the drawings, all the dilapidation reports that you have, but you come across one latent condition that could hold that part of the project up. We need to make sure that we have those contingencies in place, because, okay, well, hold point there, let's escalate this, make the site safe. What can we do now? Because the other important thing is that we've got to make sure that we keep our resources working, so we can't just have them standing around doing nothing. So it's very important that we have a flow of work for each individual resource or each discipline, and then also making sure we've got, I guess, a contingency in place where we can pull jobs forward and start those activities while we're waiting for approvals on the other side. So it's very important that you understand the scope, the timing, and ensuring that that you've got sufficient resources.
And a plan B for the inevitable that Fran refers to every now and again. You can plan as well as you like, but once you dig that hole, then you'll see what's in it ultimately. Speaking of actually Fran, because I'm mentioning Fran from Complete On-Site Group, I'm interested to hear how you went from your 25 years of construction, particularly last Indian leadership in construction purely, how you went from construction and from your relationship with Complete On-Site Group into outsourcing, which is ProSource. How did that happen? Talk me through that.
Well, look, I guess for us, it's the pain points that we've experienced. And look, anyone that's in the construction industry have these pain points. What are those pain points are? But look, for us, we work for major tier 1 companies, and it's all about efficiency. And unfortunately, the price has come down in the last 25 years. So the dollar value of a scope of work has come down, but the requirements that they want in return have escalated, double, triple. The amount of data, photos, pre-planning, evidence of pre-planning, ITPs, permit closures, all that information that needs to be gathered and collated and formatted to the client's requirements is huge. It's astronomical. And if you think about it, you've got, say, one carrier 1 and carrier 2, they all want a pit put in place, they all want 100 mil pipe linked to another existing pit or a manhole, but they both want different requirements. And the difference could be, 100%, 200% difference in the handover requirements that carrier 1 and carrier 2 may require. What we thought was, there was a lot of pain in this, preparing projects, getting them ready, construction folders for the field teams, and then getting the data back. So it was very important that we have, project coordinators, and they are the people behind the scenes that keep things humming for the teams in the field. If there's something wrong in the field, they call the project coordinators. The project coordinator will hopefully have the answers, or they can escalate it through to the client representatives.
So you're saying that the scale of operations with Complete On-Site Group means you were needing project coordinators?
Project coordinators, yes. And look, every business has them. They've all got names, and project administrators, project engineers, dial before you dig coordinators. There's so many before and after activities that are required, and in some projects you've got, I hate to say this, but you could have one project coordinator to one field worker. That's how it can look like in some project offices. And that's just astronomical, you know, the amount of bodies that we have in behind the scenes. And look, it is warranted. It's certainly it's being brought on by, unfortunately, you know, the people that we're working for, those tier ones, and you know, the people that want their network built or their bridges built, the requirements that they expect. You know, there is a massive amount of overhead that's you know, catering for that. So what we Sam and I, we've been, you know, brainstorming this for quite a while, and one of our customers has a fantastic model that they utilize a team in the Philippines, and if anything, they taught us how to do handovers, because they are so strict on their process, and if there was something wrong, they got back to you straight away and advised you what was missing. Because, you know, one little 5-cent item can hold up $100,000. So it's in our best interest and in the client's best interest to make sure that, you know, they communicate that, but also that we get the lessons learned out of that, and, you know, teaching our field workers and drumming it into them about, hang on, you're missing things, you know, take 5 more minutes, take 10 more minutes to capture your data, you know, bend down and get dirty to get that photo that's required, because that 5 or 10 minutes, you know, to send a body up there to take another photo, you're going backwards.
Yeah. So you're with Complete On Site Group. Now you mentioned yes, your relationship with Sam. I'm interested to see where did Manila come into play?
Okay, so
how did you come across that opportunity? Was it Sam or associations or relationships with?
Yeah, well, as I said earlier, one of our carrier clients is using that model, and we were so with their process, and, you know, well, it's holding up money, you know, for us. So we thought, well, you know, we're learning a lot out of this. You know, we should explore, you know, that option of, you know, project coordination using Philippine resources. So that's, we brainstormed that for 3 or 4 months. We went over to the Philippines. We met a lot of people. We went into operation centers, and we saw some fantastic setups. We saw some poor setups. And we thought this is actually, you know, something that we could look into. Firstly, for ourselves as a customer, I guess, to, you know, reduce our cost. And for what we've done is we've reduced by nearly $300,000 a year by offshoring our project coordination activities, as well as other HR activities, to the ProSource team in the Philippines. So we explored it more, but one thing that we struggled with was no one was actually out there saying, you know, to offer their services to us in the construction industry. So, you know, we thought, well, I think this is something viable that, you know, we should try under Complete On-Site Group. But, you know, the other thing is, well, we know there's a lot of other people that are experiencing the same pain as us. And it doesn't have to be in our industry, but it's across any construction industry, any manufacturing industry. A lot of
I'll interject, Eddie. So, because I've got a bit of a background in real estate, and I find it unusual because real estate's, you know, been using it for 10 years. And it's very common. It's almost uncommon not to have outsourcing or you know, getting some support from that industry. So
yeah.
What are you finding? If there were 3 takeaways or benefits for you as a business leader in outsourcing, what would you say the 3 benefits for you? You've mentioned savings, the $300,000 savings. I'm not sure where that is. Is that an hourly rates or an efficiency? I'm not quite sure. If you could just explain, just talk me through what you think the key benefits to outsourcing for you from your perspective in construction are.
Okay, so look, I guess number 1 would be what's happening as frontline leaders is they are doing a lot of work in the morning in the office, looking at plans, printing plans, uploading different components of their projects, and they're not getting out into the field till, you know, they're probably spending 3 or 4 hours in the field. So the key point for me is, if your frontline leaders are in the office doing stuff that's taking them away from what they really should be doing, they're not doing their job. So we've really got to make sure that the field, as I said earlier, if your field teams, all that they've got to focus on is quality and safety. Actually, safety and quality. Safety, quality, safety. The rest will fall into place. We need the supervision. We need them making sure that they're doing it safely. We need them to give them the guidance, coach and mentor them in the field. So for me, number one is you've got the supervision, you've got people out there doing what they should be doing. The second key for myself would be ensuring that all the planning is well and truly prepared for during pre-construction. So it enables, again, it gives you that opportunity, if you're planning well ahead in advance, when you've got these things that change in the field, you're able to adapt quite quickly and keep your field teams, you know, working or productive. And thirdly, look, I don't like to say it's all about the bottom line, but the byproduct, you know, people think, what's the byproduct of a successful team? And I suppose the end of it is we make a bit of money out of it, you know. So for me, it's about making sure things are in place so everybody actually enjoys what they're doing. They can plan their whole day knowing that, you know, even if some unforeseen circumstances arises, you know, we've got processes in place which will enable us to continue, you know, or redirect our teams, go through a change management process, and know that, you know, the guys can actually, you know, have a successful day. Because sometimes there's a lot of days out there where you're grinding away, getting nowhere, and it's quite, as a construction worker or any worker, it can be, you know, demoralizing. You know, and you think, oh, I've spent 12, 14 hours out in the field, and what have we achieved? And that is actually quite infectious across the whole team. So, you know, the benefit for me, the byproduct is everybody's happy. Well, we get to come back again the next day. We've all got our fingers, toes, we're all safe, and we get to live and work another day, another week, another month, another year. You know, the byproduct of making, you know, everybody thinks it's making money, but it's actually about continuity and keeping people employed, keeping people happy, having a nice, happy environment where we're always looking after each other and watching out for each other.
And I must admit, the one that resonated with me too is you've got your key people actually focusing on the stuff that matters. You know, that they're there to pick up the pieces. They're there driving the loss and the wins when it comes to your cash flow. I guess they're actually literally in the trenches and not sitting in an office trying to work something out in a spreadsheet for 2 or 3 hours in a day, which we've all been guilty of, I'm sure. I wanted to ask you a bit more about. I've got a couple of questions that have come up in the QA. One was when you were talking about project coordinator experience that we have onshore here versus what were your expectations when you started looking at the Philippines? Because project coordinator is not a generic call center, you know, someone who answers the phone and handles a query. There's a little more to it. So one of the questions there was what was your experience, or what were you expecting when you went looking at project coordinators in Manila? Versus what you found?
Wow, that's a great question because, yeah, look, we've all got that unconscious bias. We've all heard about what's happened, I guess, in the early days in India with Telstra.
Telstra, yeah.
Have had those phone calls. I hate making that phone call, that 1300 number, and it's taking you 5 minutes just to get to the right, you know, push 3. What did I expect? I was a bit worried. I was concerned. I was thinking, you know, that unconscious bias was in the back of my mind. I was thinking, you know, poor literature. You know, the communication skills would be quite poor. You know, and with that, you have this other unconscious bias that, okay, well, they can't communicate very well. They're not that clever either. So that was my conception when I preconception when we went over there, Sam and I.
Mm.
He conducted our first set of meetings and interviews, and we were just so impressed with the intelligence of the resource pool that we met, their experience, the level of discipline that they have, and their rigor to following procedure, and more importantly, that they actually loved doing what they were doing. They loved the satisfaction of helping a company be successful, because if they know if the company they're working for is successful, they get to live another day, another week, another month, another year. I interviewed one gentleman, and this gentleman really, really took to me, because I wanted to direct him to another role, and he applied for a role as a recruiter, which is what he's doing for us now. But the one thing we're trying to direct him in a different role was, well, what do you like about what you do? He goes, I love the satisfaction of placing somebody in a job. And I could see that in his eyes. I could see it, and I still want to put him somewhere else. And that may happen, but he is happy where he is. And at the end of the day, that's really what matters. The Philippine resources, they love what they're doing. They love to be successful. They want to please. They're lovely people. They love fun. They love music, but they are so disciplined in what they do. And it's all about process, and, if we get the opportunity to work and provide resources, we will look at the process. We'll work with our customers. We will help you develop your processes and, steer it in the right direction, because I know that the resources will just follow the procedures, and they will communicate. If there is a hold point, they know that you've got to action that and communicate it back to.
Can I ask on that note? I was alluding to it before. I was quite surprised in your journey when you and Sam, coming across someone who'd been doing some outsourcing and sort of going and doing your own exploration into the Philippines. Why? And I was just saying, so some industries that have adopted this as a way of doing the same things. Making sure their gun real estate agents or property managers are actually servicing their customer. Very professional business. So they make sure all the tedious stuff, they've got their stars, servicing their customers in the front line 24/7. So being this is quite common in real estate for the last 10 years, in the last 5, it's exploded. I'm very interested to hear, now there's the cultural stuff that you were alluding to before, but we've all known that for, since Telstra started moving everything over about 10, 15 years ago. Why do you think in construction, it just seems to be like an industry that's been a late adopter to outsourcing versus many other industries? Why do you think that is?
Look, I guess in the smaller companies, if you can't look at it yourself and touch it yourself, no one else can do it. It's having that trust and confidence that you've got the capable resource, intelligent resource, to be able to take that off your hands and take that off your plate, so you can actually focus on what you do best. We can't have engineers and supervisors that should be out in the field sitting in the office. We've got to have all that prepped and planned for them. If you think about the real estate, they've been doing it for 10 years, right? About 10, 15 years ago, a salesman would have been doing 3 or 4 hours in the office in the morning, 3 or 4 hours in the evening. If that person isn't out there, selling houses and meeting with potential buyers and vendors, he or she's not doing their role. So it's about taking those, I guess we can call them mundane tasks for, your frontline people, but they're necessary tasks, and sometimes, there are people that are more capable of doing that a lot more efficiently, a lot more quicker, utilizing technology, different IT applications that can actually improve it. And as they improve, they're actually working on, multiple tasks at the same time. So it ends up sort of becoming a sausage factory in the back of house as it would do in the field, because each component of a project, starting from pre-construction through to construction and then handover, right, they're more or less 3 different sausage factories, but they all roll into each other. And within each sausage factory, you've got another breakdown of sausage factories, whether it's from civils through to hauling, through to splicing and testing. In a construction project for building a pipeline, it's the same thing. It's your dial before your digs, it's your dilapidation reports, it's your route surveys, your design, and then you start to do your second lot of dilapidation reports, and then you move into construction. They're all different facets of a whole big end picture. But as we look at it, that really 70% of that closing out a project is happening before and after the actual work. Another analogy of that would be my favourite sports team, and it's the All Blacks. Okay, everybody that watches them on TV or goes to the ground sees 15 people running, or 30 people, 2 teams running around on the field, and there's 5 to 7 substitutes on the sideline. So there's 22 players for each side on the field, but that's all we see, right?
Yeah.
Actually see what happens before that, right? And all the tasks that has to happen for that, the training that the team goes through, the analysis, the doctors' meetings, the psychologists, you name it, that all happens. The statisticians, the individual meetings that you'll have with each player about how their performance was and what they need to do to improve, or all that's happening.
Yeah, there's hundreds of hours of work before and hundreds of hours after to service basically 80 minutes of excellence, I guess, of having that all happening, having all the right people all in the right place at the right time with the right skills, with the right attitude, with the right resources, performing for that 80 minutes, because that 80 minutes is, the difference between winning and losing, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely. And look, when you think of it like that, if you drive through a construction site, where they're widening or duplicating a freeway, the Joe public just see what they can see in front of them, all right? And they are so angry that it's holding them up, but they don't realise that the big picture is it's actually going to provide them, a bit of ease, in a couple of years' time, for example. So people don't see that and recognise that, and the people that are working behind the scenes, they're not doing it because it's a chore, they're doing it because they love it. Right? They love what they're doing and what it actually contributes to the big picture. So, if you're building a freeway, the big picture is in 3 years' time, or our children and our grandchildren are going to be driving through that like nothing. And we can go back and think, well, back in our day, there were traffic lights here. Burwood Highway, along the Princess Freeway, there used to be 4 sets of traffic lights 20 years ago. Our children wouldn't even know that. They've got it so easy. The byproduct of a well-performing team, right? It's not about the money. It's not about winning games. It's about bums on seat. It's about people recognizing who they are. It's all those other things that come into it. Sponsorship, okay, and then what they do with all of that, and then contributing back into the communities. That's the real byproduct of a successful sports team. That's the real byproduct of a successful project. So people on NBN, for example, our kids are so spoiled. They want speed, faster now. All right, what we had back in the day, the end game is how everybody's going to feel in. Sorry.
No, we wouldn't be doing this 20 years ago, that's for sure, as far as infrastructure goes. I've actually got a question here. Okay, it's to do with, apparently we're in a recession, Eddie. I don't know if it's official yet, but according to this question it is. The question here is, what are your thoughts for actually the future of the construction industry? And I think that I've asked it a 2-part question. I mean, this year and next year, over the next few months and over the next probably 12, I guess they're talking about, 2020, 2021. You've got your finger on the pulse, or your feet in the trenches, so to speak. What are your thoughts?
Well, there were projects before the COVID situation they've been put on hold. There were projects that were going to be following those projects. They're still going to happen. And there's projects that have been planned for the future. They're still going to happen. It's just a matter of when, so now we're coming out of COVID situation. Obviously in New Zealand, we're down to level 1. States in Australia, they're easing off. So things are going to start moving. The construction industry in Australia hasn't stopped. They look after your mates. We will rebuild this country. These projects will go ahead. We need to know what's happening. Sam and I were looking, we know that there are projects coming in July, the next financial year. We were planning for that, 6 months ago. COVID come into it, that's sort of delayed things by 3 months. That doesn't mean we wait 3 months. It means that we prepare ourselves now for 9 months away. We've got to
for sure.
We've got to be a quarter ahead of ourselves, 6 months, 12 months if we can. Develop those relationships with the relevant tier 1s and the constructors. So it is going to happen, but we can't just sit back and wait. Now's the time for businesses, no matter what size, is to start preparing for that and really looking at how can I be prepared for it? How can I be efficient when it does happen? In saying that, there's also probably going to be a skill shortage in that time. So, look on the government websites to see what training schemes are going to be out there. We all have relationships with RTOs. They're in the know as to what's happening as well. So look at opportunities to take on some subsidised training, and again, recruit young people. Go to schools and do workshops at schools, promoting your business or your industry and how you can, grow the future of our workforce and visit schools.
What else do you think might be driving? You're saying there's a skill gap, and I think, generally speaking, there's young leaders out there that go out and invest in their own education to drive their career forward. And that seems to be very much the Australian way. In fact, most 30-year-olds learn, post-30 Excel at school, where it's, common knowledge now. We've noticed, the apprenticeship program being fairly quiet in construction, but as you're saying, the projects, start going full tilt again. And coming into next year, what else do you think is driving the skill gap, or is it just that?
I don't think it's driving the skill gap. I think it's understanding what are the tools that we can use to be efficient, such as technology, for example. We've got to be 1 step, 2 steps ahead of utilising technology. Going paperless and getting data back to your central point, wherever that central point is, and making sure it's analysed. Because, when a lot of these projects are rural as well, and I do remember the days when you're 500 kilometres away and you've missed something. Somebody's going to go 500 kilometres and get that missing piece of data, which may hold up your cash flow. So it's about, utilising technology where it's coming back to a central point in real time, so it can be analysed while you're still there, and saying, actually, I need you to get another measurement, or take another photo, or once
you're right. You talk to the next few months with being aware of just taking that time. I think what I'm hearing is, if you've got the time now, invest in upskilling your people, so that they're ready for when things pick up a little bit. But what I'm also hearing is, and that's something you mentioned earlier, is if you're planning for success next year, you probably should have been thinking about it or doing something about it a couple of months ago. And I guess none of us have many excuses, being that it's been fairly quiet for all industries across Australia at the moment. No one can say they haven't been impacted completely, unless they're manufacturing, of course. I'm looking at things like, from my real estate background, I see things like, money's never been cheaper. And that doesn't look like it's going to change for some time. It's been cheap for a while. With the way things are going, I don't think that's going to change for the next 12 months or 24 months. So I think from my end, when I look at real estate, I see cheaper money. I've noticed too, and I don't know if that's something from our end, from the building, we've noticed councils playing the game with approval processes, like speeding up the approval process. So there's real intention behind local government and banks to really get things going as quickly as possible. So I know the money's there. We certainly know that everyone's playing games. No one's playing silly buggers when we're talking about construction. You know, the on-flowing effect, not just with the build, but in retail that comes from construction, is super important. So I guess if what you're saying is planning's important and things are going to get a little busier next year, what do you think 2021 is going to look like then? What are your thoughts around that?
Well, that's only 6 months away.
It is too. Yeah.
It's only 6 months away, and you know the last 6 months have gone pretty quick, even with the COVID situation. 2021, look. You mentioned earlier about the local government easing up on DAs and all that. It just seems like now governments are actually taking better course of action to help stimulate industry, because it is a win-win across the board. Once again, whatever their end game is, it's going to be what's happening in the future. So we need to, they're forecasting and they're opening up their budgets and bringing projects forward because they can see there is a long-term objective for, whether it's at a state, local or federal level. And it's a combination as well. So I see it getting busier, a lot busier, probably not so much in new build and construction, but certainly in housing developments. I think that increase dramatically because a lot of projects have been, put on the back burner through the COVID situation. So we just need to really, any industry, who your contacts are, which who to talk to, and keep your finger on the pulse. Because I think by next year, it's all about scalability as well, because, organizations will be looking for companies that can scale in line with their timelines. So when we say about preparing, it's training your staff and making sure you've got the right resource levels and plant, etc. But it's also, being able to demonstrate to your clients that, you're here for the long haul. We have planned this. We've forecasted how we can provide our services to this project. And if we can demonstrate that and get yourself in the door, and a lot of it, once again, this is pre-construction stage or even at conception. You've got to be able to demonstrate that. I mean, anybody can dig a hole, but it's what happens before and after, and how you can plan for it, and how you can scale to the requirements of what's going to happen next year.
And I think they're giving us there's going to be thousands of roads built next year, regardless. It's I suppose it's ensuring you're ready for when that arrives, and you haven't let the last few months sort of send your business down a different road of being conservative and constrained. It's probably time to look at, improving your skill and making sure you're ready for what's inevitable, which is things are going to continue being built.
Yeah, look, and then you think about that. People prepare on the physical side of a project, which is your construction, trucks, plant, equipment, bodies. But they always forget or overlook, not forget, they overlook the administration side of it, And preparing now for next year isn't about getting your bodies in place. It's about, your resource plans, having those administrators that can guide you towards a proposed start date, and all of that at the front end can be done quite easily with a resource at a central point, because a lot of it is data capture, a lot of it is permit applications. A lot of it is, you know, dealing with stakeholders or government stakeholders at all levels. That is what gets overlooked. So by the time you're ready to start and they're asking for certain correspondence or permits or something like that, you know, you're chasing tail. If you're chasing your tail on an administrative point of view, what's going to happen at the end, at the other side, when you're trying to get paid? So it's very important that your administration throughout the whole life cycle, right, is in place. And that way, as I've said earlier, all is what the field people have to do is focus on quality and safety. All right, do your job properly, follow procedures, give us the ITPs that we require, get it back every day, electronically, whatever format we need to, but that's the discipline that has to be followed. So it can then be followed again through the administration process. You know, a good foreman in the field will look at his project folder, and if he sees something missing, who's he going to call? He's going to call a project coordinator and go, you're missing this, 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 and this, I can't start. Hopefully he's not doing that at 6 o'clock in the morning when they're about to start. Hopefully he's doing that 1 or 2 days in advance, you know, just to double check, because things do get overlooked sometimes.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can't turn up on a job site at 6 o'clock and that's when you first look at your plans. You know, and that's no different to any field. You know, you've got a plan. It's not only the administration team that plans, it's everybody. Okay, everybody needs to know what they're doing, where their role is. You can't leave it for the last minute.
You actually mentioned something a bit earlier that sort of made me smile, and there was a question related to it I saw there too, and that was you were talking about using technology to improve processes, and you're right. I talked to some guys who work at the rural area, and the guys are using smartphones. They might have to stand under a tower somewhere. We'll make sure they're on a good network, but they're using smartphones as a technology type solution. And the way you described it, it made me smile, because it's, for me, I'm probably talking about two different types of people in construction. And I don't mean scale. I don't mean the smaller operator with a couple of subbies, trying to get his invoicing done at 1 o'clock in the morning type of guy. I'm probably talking about generational, and that is, I've noticed and I hate to use ages because that's probably not true. There's plenty of 50-year-old guys that are early adopters, but technology seems to be a given with most people when it comes to improving their processes. So I guess I'd be quite surprised that if you're not looking at that now, and you haven't taken the chance to look at that now, I hate to be a bit draconian about it, but you might get a bit left behind coming into next year when it comes to being able to be scalable and deliver on the work. What I'm probably more interested in around outside of the technology, and this is probably more talking to people who have got plans, who have actually thought about the next 6 to 9 months, who have done some planning last year and this year and looking forward to 2021 and have got some clear direction, is probably around the outsourcing question, which is you can have your technology processes you live and die by, but I'm probably talking about what we do, which is HR management, and that is looking at ways of reducing your costs and making sure that the resources you've got actually support your growth strategy, whatever that might be. Whether that's reinvesting in local talent and skills with the money you're saving, whether that's having resources that you can actually take on larger scale or multiple projects at the same time without draining your local talent, because talent's finite, I'm hearing. And from what you're hearing when you're talking about going into Manila at your first stage, I initially think Manila is volume. Of course, there's more talent there because there's more people. But one of the things you mentioned earlier was around the intelligence. And while you were doing that, someone did a little bit of research around the education standard of Manila. And I'm not sure how true it is around the university education. And I wanted to ask you about that, but they were saying that it's closer to people with diplomas and degrees in Manila, it's closer to 40% plus, whereas here in Australia, it's 27 to 30. Do you think, and you talked about the culture and the discipline of the work ethic, but why is the education different? They're not It can't be they're brighter. What do you think it is? Is it that?
Look, if what I see is that it is a lifestyle for them. You know, it's actually inbred at all levels at school. It's a career path for them, and you know, the amount of tertiary qualified people that we have, you know, it's amazing. And why they're doing what they're doing is because they love what they're doing. Unfortunately, you know, look, you know, engineering, for example, electrical engineering, civil engineering, there is a lot of engineering processes that need to be adhered to, where you don't need to be out on site as well. So it's all those calculations. So you can have a surveyor or a lead engineer in the field getting all that data back to a central location to be collated, and this is all happening in real time. A lot of the use of technology nowadays, you know, we were using GoPros 5 years ago to do our field surveys, and around looking, you know, with this on our chest and that. But when we went back to look at our data, I overlooked that. Yeah, and you can see things that sometimes you don't pick up all the time. But for the resource pool in the Philippines, you know, it is a career path for them. They must be, you know, in their schools and their development, it's showing them a pathway for them to, you know, an option for them to explore. And, you know, the resource pool is huge. And from what I see, just walking the streets in Metro Manila, you can just see the buzz of those people that are working in those central locations. That, you know, it's exciting. They look excited. They love what they're doing. They're not overly worked. I can see what time, you know, obviously work depending on what time zone they're working in. You can actually see those different changes in time zones and the excitement, the buzz that people that you can actually see on their way to and from work. So I think the resource pool is huge because it's entrenched in the early days, and look, there's so many options for them to, and career paths in whatever field they want to venture towards. The other main thing I do see over there is the HR component over there. HR is pretty much the same all around the world. It's just making sure that we understand local legislation. But the disciplines of HR doesn't change, and the rigor that I see in the Philippines is immense. And you know, if they can continue along those lines, which they are, it just makes it a lot easier and gives you that level of comfort that if they're following that rigor, that, you know, we can pass it on and offer that to, you know, any resource or any project.
So I'm in construction.
Yes.
Yeah. I've got a plan for the next few months. Excuse me a minute. I'm hearing the industry's matured certainly over the last 10 years or 20 years from the Telstra Manila days, if we all recall that, but we're old enough to remember that. But certainly matured. There's certainly an opportunity there. There are industries that have run with it, you know, and used it as a resource to free up the time of their skilled people, use it so they can actually take on more clients and provide better service, I guess. One of the things I've got a question here of, sorry, there's some. Oh, okay, I'll park these. There's a lot of great questions. Evelyn's got a few here, and that's from your training experience. I'm going to jump into that one. What changes did you make with your team in Australia to help with the training of your Philippines team?
Well, we sent some subject matter experts from Sydney to our team in the Philippines. They spent, you know, a few weeks. One was in the finance side, and two others were in the project coordination components of our projects, and spent a lot of time at that level. But we've also got a superstar transition team that are working closely in real time, Teams meetings, and developing processes to make sure we align with the client's requirements. So it's quite important that that we have the client managers and transition coordinators integrating with the customer and really understanding, you know, their pain points, their processes, their communication and escalation processes, and, you know, who do we ask those pertinent questions. And then together we can, you know, work with their procedures or help develop their procedures to keep it a lot more well, smooth running. Because look, like any, if you recruit an individual, a team member, the process is the same of what you do and how you recruit that person, but it's really how you train that person. So it's really important that, you know, we understand what our clients' needs are and what the client needs from their employee, because at the end of the day, it's their employee. We've just got a superstar employee that we're housing in a beautiful place with all the technology that can support that individual to be successful, to help our client be successful. So it's very important. So that transition stage, it doesn't just stop. I mean, you're transitioning and you're learning throughout, you know, the whole term of the employment.
Hey, the other question here is, and it's actually probably more a cultural one, since you've actually done it in complete on-site group with ProSource, and that was at the beginning, when we talk about keeping people employed, what was the transition experience with your Australian team to incorporate their first Philippines team? You know, how was it accepted or challenged?
Look, I think they would have had the same misconception that I had before I went over to the Philippines, but they were part of the recruitment process as well. You know, so, you know, we get to send profiles of their superstar. They get to interview the superstar, whichever 1, 2, 5 that they want, and making sure that they can, you know, like you would as in any interview, that individual. So it's quite important. So for us, even before we source the individuals, you know, we really need to understand what the client wants. We have generic position descriptions that will cover, you know, most roles, but there's also checklists that we get the client to fill out to what specific needs do you need. You know, what application.
I suppose like that's the process. I was probably more interested in how was the messaging accepted. Like if I'm working in a business and you start introducing the concept of onshoring and offshoring, particularly when we've come out of a recession phase and keeping Australians employed is, you know, is number one. Let's not kid ourselves, you know. We've been blessed. We're nowhere near where Europe and a lot of other countries in the West are going. But when people are looking into, you know, people are looking at their jobs, what do you expect you do expect the challenge? What are the challenges to moving roles within a business into an offshore format, I guess? And from your experience, how was it accepted in complete site? Because you were a part of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we had a development plan for some of the individuals that were part of the training. So more or less, it's like it's a succession plan. We have other roles that are available. We want to upskill our project coordinators, I guess, and for us to do that, we need you to participate in the training regime that we have for, you know, your replacement. Now, whether that was going to be a replacement offshore or locally, you know, that we want that same level of enthusiasm and rigor with the throughout that process. So it's about, you know, showing them that they're part of the process. They're not being, you know, moved aside or moved on. They're being, you know, redirected to another role which would benefit them more as well. So it gets them highly motivated in the part of the process. And that hasn't been, you know, smooth sailing, but, you know, it's like anything, as long as we're aligned with with our objectives, our values, and really what we want to achieve out of it, we will reach the end game. The sooner we get it, obviously, the better. But sometimes it may take a bit longer. But it has been very smooth to date. Our managers are happy with the way we're performing, and in our industry, the goalposts are moving all the time. And as I said earlier, we are doing the same physical scope of work for two different carriers, and they're chalk and cheese as to what they want in regards to handover. So it's very important that we have that documented well, so we can differentiate. Not only the guys in the field can differentiate which customer I'm working in for today because they want something different, which manual do I pull out, which process and ITP do I pull out. It's the same with our project coordinators. Okay, this is a carrier one project. This is the guidelines I must follow. So,
I've got to wrap this up because we are over time. I can't even go to a Q&A. So we'll take a note of some of the questions we've got. If we haven't answered them, we'll contact you directly and answer them. But thank you for your time, Eddie. I just wanted to ask, particularly around the outsourcing, for those that aren't familiar with it, particularly in construction, unlike other industries, is a couple of things. What should I look for in an outsourcer, and probably what are the couple of things, the couple of questions I should be asking an outsourcer? Because essentially, if I'm looking at outsourcing in my business, I'm probably more on fact finding and understanding, I guess. Yeah. So for you, what should I be looking for, and what questions should I be asking?
What level of support am I going to get from your service provider? So, a lot of we just provide you the body and then you train the person. What support for that individual or individuals? IT security is paramount. All right. Our biggest investment when we started this business is in our IT security and our expertise that we needed to have on board to ensure, even conducting this webinar, we need to make sure that we have simple tech solutions for our customers, but at the back end, the back of house, once again, like any project, the back of house on your IT is immense, and we need to make sure that we have levels of redundancy. So if things happen, we've got 3 service providers coming into our central location. So it's very important that you understand and make sure that your security with regards to IT is 100%, but also I know it's all contractual, but making sure that we've got that confidentiality agreements between the companies and between the individuals and the employer in all directions, because once again you're trusting on that individual, that organization to take care of your affairs in a confidential manner. So what support can you get? So with us, you will not only get the individual, you are supported by a team of superstars across all disciplines. So your IT, your HR, your quality, your commercial finance, operations, transition, and then it's the ongoing operations beyond that. And how can we support you? And also, finally, it's what partnerships do we have with other service providers, whether it be IT, support or applications that we can, help streamline our clients' processes.
So I guess that so your takeaways in that one is, if I'm looking at it, is the why is solid, the efficiency, the processes, the scalability, the cost. But I think what you're talking to is the how. How well is that business supported? Is it not just someone working remotely in an office with a swinging light bulb somewhere in Manila? But what's the support network? What's the experience of the people who are not only in the construction business, but have the corporate experience and the support to actually make it successful, particularly for some of us that see it as a bit of a minefield and not sure where to start. Would that be right, Eddie?
Absolutely. And look, and finally, it's all about the culture that you have within your business as well. We've got a vision to create time, and that can mean anything to anybody. right? I mean, I'm guilty of that, and I can't go into that because we're running out of time, but it's about
Yeah.
for your people. We've lost time because I talk too much. But we have a vision. We want to develop a strong culture. We want our people to be happy. We want our clients to be happy. If our people are happy, they're communicating every day with their clients, and it's a happy place. And we provide them with state-of-the-art technology, a beautiful office environment, and they love coming to work. That's
well, Eddie, thank you for sharing your insights and your experience. I'm happy to have been a part of this experience as a member of the ProSource team. I look forward to some future ones. I wish we could talk a little bit more, but I've got work to do today, as well as yourself, Eddie.
We do.
So it's time for a coffee. Shoot off your questions. If you've got them, we'll reach out to you. If you want to talk more, just give us a call. I'm happy to talk to you personally. Thank you very much for your time, all of the attendees out there. We do appreciate there will be others. Have a great day, wherever you are in Australia or in New Zealand, and we will talk again soon. Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.